I believe that my work is a job. It's a job that I'm trying to solve what I think is a very critical and humanity important problem. Not in some insane conspiracy theory sense, but we have to recognize that the world is different today than it was 2 years ago. Now you can talk to a computer and a computer can talk back.
We're excited to welcome Curtis Northcutt, PhD from MIT and inventor of CleanLab algorithms that automatically detect data issues, now powering AI for over 80 Fortune 500 companies. With a career spanning work at Google, Oculus, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, and NASA, Curtis has earned the NSF Fellowship, Goldwater Scholarship, and MIT's Morris Levin Thesis Award. He's currently the CEO and co-founder of CleanLab, helping organizations boost AI performance and value from every data point. In this episode, we unpack the hidden problem of bad data and AI, how CleanLab fixes it, and what better data means for the future of machine learning.
Are we embarking on a world that we become so dependent on AI that it could potentially affect our cognitive ability?
The cognitive decline part is harder, but will it affect? Respectfully, it's not a question. It's a guarantee.
Curtis, you coined the phrase confident learning. What is that?
Yeah, so confident learning is a subfield of machine learning. And it's kind of funny in the modern day, we get excited when people coin phrases, like on a tweet, some Andre Karpathy will say something, and that's the big deal now. At the time, though, what I actually did was I spent 8 years with the person who invented the quantum computer, Isaac Chuang, who trained me as a scientist, and very formally, was very hard on me and trained me for almost a decade on how we take the field of quantum computing and we use it to estimate a 0 to 1 value, just like quantum computing, but for all AI outputs and all machine learning, so that we could then say, is it actually taking an action? Is it yes or no? Or somewhere in between? And if it's somewhere in between, then we have a confidence now in every output of a machine learning model like ChatGPT, which gives us a theoretical field of machine learning that is grounded in provable theory that we can actually show with constraints that we know. For example, when it says some statement that comes out of ChatGPT, or when a computer is like, hey, here, let me hallucinate some nonsense. We now have a score between 0 and 1 for that hallucination that is highly accurate, where we can actually say that it's not saying the right thing.
Right, so if you were to sort of break it down as a problem statement, one that you're solving, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so what we're solving is giving machines self-awareness that they can report back to humans so that humans know whether they can trust a machine. We solve the problem of AI reliability.
Wow, so if I'm using ChatGPT, it will tell me if it's 70% or 80% confident that the data is correct.
That's exactly right. And every other LLM and machine learning model that's ever been invented or will be invented.
That's awesome. So Curtis, I want to go back to the beginning before we dive in. There's a lot to unpack today, but you have a super unique background. And I say unique because I've recorded quite a few episodes. I've had a number of founders and CEOs and investors on this show, but I'm yet to record one with a PhD wrapper from MIT to CEO. And I know you have quite a lot to talk about that. Let's unpack that. Let's talk about the beginning. Where did it all start? What kind of brought you to this journey of starting your own company? And I'd love to get to know the human side of you, the real you. What inspires you?
Yeah, so it's a big question. What would you like me to chat about? The journey, the rapping side, the MIT side?
Let's go from the beginning. Let's start at MIT. Let's you did share with me before recording this that you have a passion for the music side, and I'd love to understand where that passion comes from. But you also seem to have a purpose. You said you need to do this, or at least you feel like you have to do this. So I'd like to understand this founder CEO journey, what it means to you, especially in today's Silicon Valley. But let's go from the beginning. MIT. When you were there, what were you working on? How did that inspire you to build what you're building today?
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions in there, and one thing I'll clarify is that the thing that I need to do is the job that I do, and I do consider it a job. A lot of people say, "Oh, my work's not a job; it's fun," but I believe that my work is a job. It's a job that I'm trying to solve what I think is a very critical and humanity important problem. Not in some insane conspiracy theory sense, but we have to recognize that the world is different today than it was 2 years ago. Now you can talk to a computer and a computer can talk back. I think people aren't just sitting and thinking about that. We talk to computers now and computers talk back. We don't live in the same world anymore. Now computers write code. They also read code. They also have infinite memory, and they can run in parallel, thousands of them, to answer a single statement. like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for the world? And I think there's some really big questions that people aren't maybe thinking about as much as they should. But I'm thinking a lot about them, and so are a lot of really smart people. And that's why I do my job. My job is to make AI work reliably. And to me, it's a job. I need to solve this problem. We are, as a species, not going to be capable for a very long time. The length in which we're going to be capable as a species to be able to understand AI is not actually that many years. Like, I don't know how many. It's very unpredictable. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. But there will be a period when we are like dogs to AI. It will be like a human looking at a phone, and the way your dog interprets that is, my master, my human, my friend, the person who feeds me is staring at this little black plastic thing instead of giving me attention, and I have no idea how they can do that for 5 hours. The dog won't be able to contemplate that, like, you're actually buying stocks, or like what does buying stocks mean to a dog? And that's going to be where AI is at some point. It's a guarantee, and at that point, we will be interpreting what AI is doing as humans, but we won't be able to interpret it with the full understanding of what it's actually doing. And in that way, AI will be able to do things to society and to humanity that we're not aware of. Little tiny things. Sort of like how, think about TikTok. When TikTok came out, we sort of understood the impact of, like, staring at something that has likes, and, like, if someone can like what you do, how that will impact your behavior. And, like, we kind of got that from a psychological and cognitive theory perspective. But we didn't quite deeply understand that, like, little girls that we raise will now be, like, looking in the mirror and, like, thinking they're too fat all the time. And we didn't think about, like, how boys will be watching violence and, like, shooter games from, like, the age of 6 years old, and in their mind be thinking about shooting things as they walk down the street. Like, we just didn't really quite understand the implications of the technology that we built. It's not going to be like that with AI. It's going to be much, much, much different, much faster, much more extreme, and it will be much more understated. It won't be so clear. The AI will sort of say something very nicely and very kindly, and you won't realize what's actually happening. That deep down, you're slowly and subtly being biased in various directions, and how you're biased is unclear. And that's the world that we're headed. So it is my job to try to solve the problem of making AI do the right thing, be controllable, and we built a whole governance platform that allows you to orchestrate, control, observe, monitor, measure AI agents. And we're very, very at the start of the market, but there are real businesses out there that are building these, and they're working with us to try to provide their customers reliable, transparent, controllable AI that actually serves their customers and is in control for the foreseeable future. So you can see how that's very much a job. My passions are very different, and one of those passions is music, and I'm very happy to chat about that journey. I completely skipped the whole MIT journey. I'm happy to chat about that.
Yeah, I'd love that. Before we talk about the music piece, this is quite profound, and it's humanity at work in a sense, because you're talking about the possibility where if we don't pay attention to what's being built, there's a real possibility that this technology is going to become so advanced that could potentially become a threat.
What I don't foresee is, like, a bunch of robots with red eyes shooting people. I think that's nonsense. Think about it. If you were a super intelligent thing, would you create something that looks evil and terrifying, or would you create something that looks soft and cuddly? Just think about that for a second. It's not going to be a future where robots with red eyes are shooting people. Like, that's just not going to happen. If that does happen, it'll be because of humanity, because we've trained these things on humanity's nonsense ideas. Like, the word threat is accurate, and you can call it a threat, but a threat is sort of associated with something that's blatantly obvious, like a gun at your face. And I don't think this will be like a gun at your face. I think the sort of people who are like, oh, society is going to be destroyed, and all, I mean, I don't know. I can't predict that. That's a very unpredictable thing. I'm not so worried about that. I'm much more worried about the surreptitious, sort of underlying semi-lack of alignment type stuff where suddenly AI still looks like it's doing the right thing, and it looks like it's saying the right thing, but there's little subtle, if we're interacting with it all the time, since it allows us to be much more intelligent and effective at what we do, and you'll notice, by the way, everyone's feeling the pressure of having to use AI in their job in the Bay Area, and the Bay Area is a decent indicator of the future for the world because we build a lot of the technology here and then we share it. And so you can expect that more and more people outside of the Bay Area over time will also start to feel more pressure on their jobs to use AI. And so now if you're being made to use AI, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week, you might find that you also use AI to help you parent And you might find that you use AI to help you make music. And you might find that you're kind of using AI 24/7. And before you know it, AI will be like a mobile device where it's kind of on your hip all the time and you always use it. Maybe you'll wear glasses with AI. Maybe AI will be plugged directly into your brain. And so at some point, you'll be so continuously working with AI, how could you possibly not expect it to bias you a little bit? And how will it bias you? How will humanity know how AI is biasing you? It'll be super intelligent. So for now, it's not super intelligent. For now, it still says dumb things and makes mistakes. And CleanLab is one of the best companies in the world at catching those things. But there will come a future. And I believe that we are past the catalytic point. If you want to coin a term, there's a catalytic point for AI. And that catalytic point required 5 things, which we have now achieved as a society. We have given these things to AI. And I'm an AI researcher as well, so I've given these things too. We've given them infinite memory, so they have access to memory now. They have access to reasoning, so they can take their inputs back into themselves and think about them and give better inputs. They have access to parallelism, so they can spread, like deep think, for example, is a great example of this. We have the ability now to talk to a computer and a computer can talk back. We have the ability to use the outputs from these things in order to improve them. And that sort of scenario enables something to continuously get better. There's someone, if you know Ilya Sutskever, he's worth knowing. And anyone who doesn't know him, please pay attention to him, since he invented the transformer effectively and also reasoning models, and was a big creator of GPT. He was the original CTO and co-founder at OpenAI. And our CTO at CleanLab worked directly with Ilya and was mentored by him in the summer of 2016. And I'm a huge fan of Ilya as well. I deeply respect him. And if you listen to sort of what is he devoting his life to, it's very much to a super intelligent AI and how do we sort of make it safe. I think this stuff is just kind of scary and very unpredictable for people, so it's kind of hard for them to wrap their head around what that means. And like, are people being sycophantic? Or sorry, are people being like just sort of ridiculous? And it's like, maybe there's a little ridiculous to it, but also like it's an incredibly fast and high changing thing, because you have AI research is now helping write the code for AI. That is a snake that eats its tail. It will get faster and faster. If you use the thing to create the thing, that's how things are made faster and faster. And so we're past this catalytic point where we are now certain that AI will continually to get better and better. And if something has all the pieces it needs to do computation, the same thing that a human brain can do, then at some point, if it's getting better and better, and also has all the things you need to do human computation, then you have all the pieces for the catalytic point to be surpassed, that AI will indeed be smarter than humans. And most people believe that that's a guarantee now as a certain future.
Definitely thought-provoking. A lot to unpack there. From the beginning, when you were at MIT, surely, as you said, you had some interesting insights. You worked with mentors, you had people that led the way in terms of thinking around AI. Were there any particular mentors that you had worked alongside that truly inspired you during that period?
Yeah, Jan LeCun. My advisor was incredible. So Jan LeCun was not my advisor. He was someone I worked with for one summer at Facebook AI Research Fair in 2016. I was in the New York office. It was a very different team then. I sat by Tomas Mikolov, who created Word2Vec, which was sort of the beginning of real embeddings that could do incredible things. I also sat next to Sumit Chintala, who was at the time that I was there was inventing PyTorch, and he was just hacking away on his computer late at night while I was an intern, and I was hacking away on something I thought was really cool too. But I used to look over at Sumit and I'd be like, dude, what are you up to? You know, like, what are you doing? He's like, shh. And eventually, you know, that later that summer, PyTorch comes out. He was a great guy to work with. You know, the whole team was just this incredible team. There are certain moments in history when certain people come together and do amazing things in short periods of time. And I got to experience that. I'm very grateful for that, deeply grateful. I was at one of the most intelligent and creative AI research labs in the world, at the mecca of its ability. And that summer, so many papers came out. Like, they invented the foundation of, if you've ever heard of sort of the StarCraft competitions and like Dota competitions where AI is like beating humans. So a lot of that, you saw that out of DeepMind, but like the OG research, a lot of that was coming out of FAIR. Not StarCraft, but FAIR was doing basically like all of the Nintendo games and like the Atari games. And they made tremendous progress, really cool stuff. So that came out later that summer, and a lot of that was pushed by FAIR, and there was a competition with DeepMind. But FAIR did a lot of its own stuff, like they invented star space embeddings, where you could just train on a data set of like arbitrary, just general data, and it would just create embeddings. A lot of this embedding work is the future of modern neural networks. That lab was inspiring, and that summer, interestingly enough, Jeff Hinton came in to visit us. And so I spent, a day with Jan LeCun and Jeff Hinton and all these researchers. And my manager she was wonderful as well, Elon Baroche, very intelligent person. And I spent the whole day with them, and I could just watch how they interacted. And one thing that's really fun, I love to share, is that Jeff Hinton, he had just built capsule networks, which I think are forgotten by many, but they were an incredible invention. Very complicated at first to understand, but he did get better at explaining them. And it's a reasonable thing where you can it's sort of like theory of mind combined with neural networks, so that combining some of the Marvin Minsky work with the Jeff Hinton work to create these sort of capsule networks where everybody has their own job and they all work together. Anyway, it was really an incredible advancement, but I think it was lost by a lot of the community due to its complexity. Anyway, so he comes in and he's sharing this thing he's really excited about, and it turns out that he's able to use these capsule networks to find an error in Jan LeCun's MNIST dataset. And this is a very famous data set that Jan LeCun is known for. And all of FAIR, there's like 20 of us in there. It's a very small group at the time. We're all sort of laughing at Jan playfully and, out of respect, but laughing like, aha, there's an error in your data set. And I found this very interesting, that Jeff Hinton was so excited, the forefather of modern AI and the inventor of neural networks was so excited to find a single error. And so I actually spent the next years wondering, hey, can I invent a new field of science, of machine learning, that can find all the errors in any data set? And that is how confident learning got invented.
Honestly, that gave me goosebumps because I had Scott Dietzen on the show as well, a CEO of Pure, recent CEO of Augment, now board member, and he spoke about Jeff quite a lot on the show because he was under he was being taught by him at university. And it's interesting, right? You talk about these mentors and you talk about the people that you worked around. One thing that gets quite lost in Silicon Valley, in sales we talk about it a lot, but I don't hear it a lot. When you sort of scroll through LinkedIn or you meet people, one thing that truly gets lost is the need for this level of grit, this level of surrounding yourself by the right people. It's quite a cliche phrase, you're the average of the 5 people or the 10 people you surround yourself by, but you've name dropped a lot of people there. How important has it been to you and continues to be important to you to surround yourself by great minds, not only in the sort of research, science, educational field, but individuals that truly believe that the need for hard work, for grit, for tenacity, it's a very tough world being a founder. How important is that to you?
So there's a few questions there. The importance of surrounding myself by smart people cannot be understated. If you want to push yourself, surround yourself by people who push themselves. The work that I do is very difficult, and I have 2 co-founders who are some of the hardest working and smartest people I've ever met. They're very focused in a certain dimension of themselves. There are other dimensions of themselves they haven't developed, so neither of them are, for example, interested in making rap music. And they're very focused people, and they're very intelligent people. One of them, as I mentioned, was trained with Ilya Sutsvikar, but he wouldn't even mention that to you. And in fact, you may never know that. If you even spent 7 years with him, he still may never mention that, because to him, that's not what matters. What matters is that when he speaks, he's accurate, and that he does good work with the time that he has on this planet. And that's what you'll know about him. You won't know, for example, that he has over 35,000 stars on GitHub, or that he has over 10,000 citations on Google Scholar, or that he has the best paper award in the #1 machine learning conference in the world. And these are the people that I work with, very understated, very non-marketing people. And I don't think, for example, as a business, that we do particularly well in sharing those things. I think there are a tremendous number of startups out there creating hype and all sorts of stuff. We're over here just solving what we think is the most important problem, and we're working as hard as we can every day. We don't go on and on about the things that we've accomplished because they're in the past. We're very focused on what we can do for the world in the future. And we believe this will work, this will win out. And it may take 5 years, or it may take 20, and it may be a very painful life. But we believe that at the end of that life, we will be fulfilled by the work that we've done, and we will have done good work. And that's the mentality we approach every day with.
Humility is so important. I believe that. When I think about the greatest people in the industry that I've had the pleasure of working for or working with, one person that comes to mind is Mike Spicer. Mike is super, super humble. Probably one of the most successful investors. He doesn't even describe himself as an investor. He describes himself as a builder. But working with people like Mike and the different founders within the portfolio, but even outside of Sutter Hill, all the different founders I've worked with, the ones that I find to be truly inspirational is the one that have achieved so much, but the level of humility is just super profound. And it's interesting, like you might be sitting next to somebody and they talk to you about they don't talk to you about the people they worked with, or as you said, your co-founders. It is truly inspirational.
Yeah, there's one thing I want to add to that, which is that certain environments train humility. And I'll give you an example. If you have a massive ego, but say that you've never taken a machine learning course in your life and you have a massive ego, and I'm speaking about myself. And so this was me when I went to grad school at MIT. I had just won valedictorian of Vanderbilt, which at that time I was a very untrained mind in very many dimensions of self. I let it just go straight to my head. They put me in front of 50,000, 60,000 people at Vanderbilt as a senior. I'm 22 years old, and honestly, I haven't done anything really. I've just done okay at school, really. But they put me in front of 60,000 some people, and they started reading my accomplishments. And I stood there proud. They put gold around my neck, a heavy $2,500 Krugerrand, which is basically a massive metal gold coin. They put it around my neck, and they said, "This is the valedictorian of Vanderbilt. Let me read their accomplishments, NSF award, MIT." They just kept going on and on. I soaked it up, and I felt like, wow, I'm a great person. Wow, I've done well. I felt all those feelings. And I think a lot of environments can give you that feeling. That's one way of thinking about it. So then I went to MIT. I first did a summer in Lincoln Lab, and Lincoln Lab was sort of like the beginning getting to MIT, and I was able to still hold on to that ego and that sort of arrogance and confidence. There's a lot of tweets about arrogance versus confidence, but I think it's very difficult to discern between the two, no matter how much we try. So then I got to MIT. I had a very hard life growing up, and I'm happy to chat about that and how that's really the motivation. That's the real reason why I do what I do, is I experienced a lot of pain growing up, and I don't want that pain for the rest of the world. I had a story about who I was and how incredible I was when I went to MIT. And I met someone within a few days named Cody Coleman, who now runs a Series B startup called Coactive AI. And Cody's a dear friend of mine. I feel very warm towards him and want only success for him. So I met Cody in the first few days, and I told Cody, "Hey, I'm Curtis," and he says, "Hi, I'm Cody." And it turns out we were going to work together. We eventually became roommates and lab mates, and we lived together and became very good friends. But at this time, we had just met each other, and I say hello, and he says hello. And within about 2 minutes, I start sharing how hard my life has been and all the things I've accomplished. And Cody just listens very kindly and very humbly, and then says back to me, "That's really, really wonderful. I empathize with you. I was born in prison." And I thought, oh my God, I have overstepped. I've been at MIT for 3 days, and I'm meeting with someone who has basically he went to undergrad at MIT, and he has like a 4.0, and he's taking the same classes I am. He was a black kid born in prison. And here I am trying to think about how great I am, and I'm talking with someone who's doing better than me in the class we're taking together and was born in prison, which means he started at a lower place than even I did, and he worked himself up to where he is now. And that was my experience for 8 years. 8 years I experienced that, and that really taught me a lesson. I tell people the main thing I found at MIT was the community. The main thing I learned at MIT was humility. I know you probably think of MIT as university, but when I think of MIT, I think of home. It's because it's a very special place, and it's a breeding ground to train people that they are not way smarter or better than other people, because there are so many people there who are better than you. It's an incredible place to learn humility. Humility can be learned. It's not something that some people are born with and not born. It can be learned, and your environment has a big impact on it.
I definitely can relate to that. And it's an interesting concept is the environment that teaches you to be either arrogant, egotistical, or humble. In our sales environment, that's super, super evident. When I started my firm, Harrison Clark, one thing that I wanted to do was completely eradicate arrogance in the sales culture. Because, there's a low barrier of entry in our industry, in recruitment. You have 21, 22-year-olds who come in and make a few placements, and they get a big commission, and everyone's ringing the bell, and all of a sudden you're the most successful person. Yes, you worked hard, there's probably an element of luck, but at 21, 22, all of a sudden you're buying a Rolex and you think you run the world, you have everything. And I saw that for the best part of 6-7 years before I started my own firm. And the main thing I wanted to change, and I think part of it came from being in Silicon Valley. I moved to SF in 2015, and I saw that the level of greatness there is far more profound than what I've ever experienced in sales. So I'm originally from the UK, and I met someone who's also from the UK in Palo Alto. It must have been the first or second week. We're having tea, funny enough. And he said to me, here in SF, in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley, if you're not a $1 billion company, you're not even in the league. Well, that told me right there and then is there's a lot to do, a lot to achieve. Truly put yourself amongst the greats. I agree with you. I think humility is so important.
The funny thing is that even that statement, which in some ways is humble, is also very not humble. And so at some point you get into philosophy, and we can avoid that maybe for the sake of the quality of content. But it is worth noting that this mentality that you have to be a $2 billion company to even be successful, that itself is extremely dangerous. What a dangerous thought. All that matters is at the end of the day, did you do what you thought was right, and did you work as hard as you could at it? Nothing else really matters. And if you have some insight into, for example, AI, which I've studied for a very long time, and I have deep reasons for why I do it, and I'm happy to chat about why I do it. But if you have an insight into something, and you think that that something can be improved for the world and for people, and you think you know how to do it, then just be relentless and don't stop and figure out what you can do. And as long as you're doing that, 2 billion or 100 million or worth nothing, it doesn't matter. Just try and don't give up, and don't let the world talk you out of something that you deeply believe in. And I really wish there was less of the influence we have now. There's so many people talking in our ears, and there's so much Instagram, so much TikTok influence, and all of this stuff fills our head with what we think we should be doing versus what intrinsically deep in our hearts we know what matters is family and science and people, and like we know the things that matter, but yet there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of things being sold to us, and there's a lot of, we have to take photos and we have to get likes and we have to post on Twitter. There's even a lot of pressure on me, for example. Like I get messages like, now LinkedIn, you have to post videos of your face on LinkedIn to get more likes, and otherwise your company won't be successful. And like maybe that's true, but I just fundamentally believe that if I devote myself to the task at hand, and I do good work, and I do my work on time, and I deliver results, and I'm known as a person with a reputation of quality work, that the rest will follow. And that's the way I try to live. I don't know what's right for everyone, but I feel like it's right for myself.
I agree. I mean, look, the whole social media aspect, like, let's talk about this podcast. A lot of people in my industry kept saying to me in 2019, 2020, you need to do a podcast, you need to do a podcast. And I didn't. Part of it was because I felt like, what am I even going to talk about? And I needed time to build the network. But the second part of it, when you're so deep into what you're building, and you're like, recruiting is very difficult. You know, it's a very, very taxing job to find great talent that 9 times out of 10, they don't want to make a move. So it takes a lot of time out your day to put in the effort to even find one candidate. You know, I get what you're saying. I think it's so interesting how society is. But I hear this passion in your voice that kind of leads me to my second thing that I'd love to talk about is music. There's this, you said before we recorded this, that this is a job, this is something you have to do, but your passion is in music. Why is that?
And I do have a lot of passions that are also related to AI. I spent most of my life on it. I will say, I have to say, it's not fair to say. On the weekend, if I had not spent so much time doing work, I would just keep working. And sometimes I do work even on the weekend. I just think it's so interesting what AI is doing and how people are using it. So I am actually very deeply passionate about AI as well. The music passion is very similar. The same thing drives both. So imagine like a sort of a tree, and there's a root, and that root is the motivation. And then from that root there are many nodes, and one of those nodes is to make music. Another one of those nodes is to like climb mountains. I love to climb mountains. Another one of those nodes is to run a company. Another one of those nodes is to do fundamental research for AI. So they're all driven by that root node. So let's chat about the root node. And the root node is that it's very honest. I mean, my family didn't get along very well growing up, and I don't have a lot of memories. I mean, I have a very good relationship with my mother now, but I don't have a lot of good memories of like my parents, for example, like laughing together. I remember them laughing at things like the TV, but I don't really have a memory of them like warmly laughing with each other. Like I don't have that memory. It's just not inside me. I don't have that. I've tried to create it fictitiously just to bring me peace, but it's just not really like the type of thing. And there's many examples of that. I have a lot of memories where we did not have food. I think my parents were overwhelmed. I think life was hard for them. And we grew up in this like stone house in Kentucky, which I think was good for them at the time, but when I look at it compared to the world that we live in now, it was kind of crap. Like it had a massive hole in the living room ceiling, like really big, like a 3 by 6 foot hole in the living room ceiling. All that insulation like fell through. And like that was like a random 2 week thing that I just grew up with as a kid. And it was just a mess. It was very messy, very dirty. And eventually my parents separate and I went and lived with my mom for a while, and that didn't go very well. And I had to legally divorce her in court with a judge. I had to basically have her no longer be my mother legally so that I could live with my father. And there were a lot of reasons for that. And she had a terrible life at the time. She had cancer, had just been divorced, lost her job, and her own son divorced her. And so I have no idea what she was going through, but I knew she wasn't fit to be a mother, and she knows that she wasn't fit to be a mother. It was just a bad time for her, and so we had a 10 years where we didn't speak. And this is just the way I grew up. My sisters did not have any relationship with my mother my entire childhood. My mother did not invite my sisters to even live with her, which they resented at times when they were growing into womanhood. And it's just a very sadness on sadness. And I could keep going, but I won't. My dad was a mailman, and his dad was a mailman, and his dad was a mailman. And so if I'd been a mailman, I would be a fourth generation mailman. So I'm just a poor kid from rural Kentucky. When I asked my high school counselor, where should I apply for college? And she was like, no one goes anywhere except for University of Kentucky. And so I applied for the University of Kentucky. And on a whim, because so there's something called the Common Application, it allowed you to submit your college application to 3 other universities. And so I asked my dad, like, well, I get it for free. We had no money at the time, so like it cost $50 to submit the common application. I know these things. That's the thing. And I know how much milk was. And like I had to train. I was trained to know all these things because we had no money. Milk was $1.99 for half gallon and $2.99 when it was on sale for a gallon. Like it's a real thing. Kentucky, Kroger's. Like I can just go and list the prices. Eggs are 99 cents. Bread is 99 cents on sale. Like this is how I was trained growing up because we had so little. It's very difficult to compare that life to now. But anyway, so that's where things were. I guess as I got older and older, I realized, my God, I don't have any opportunity. And I wanted so badly to like write a math book because the math books that I was learning from were terrible. The teacher was not teaching well. And I felt like this can be fixed. Like this is a real problem. We can do better. So I started talking with anyone I could about how I can start to write a better math book when I was 12 years old. No one helped me. And I would read all these things about Galileo wrote a math book when he was 7 and all this stuff. I became very curious. How did Galileo write a math book when he was 7? Like, who published that? That means that Galileo had like a publisher who could work with him. Like, what a wonderful thing. I'm so happy for him. And it's like, how does, Kanye West, you see all these videos where he's like programming. His mom has bought him like a full digital set, and he's like 8 years old, and he's like making beats. When I showed my first rap song to my father, he told me, this is terrible, never do that again. I started to realize as I grew up that different people, no matter how ambitious, no matter how incredible that human being is, they are not born into an environment which is nurturing them and nurturing their capabilities. And I won't stand for it. I think it's a terrible world, and that dimension of the world. I think the world is wonderful in many other ways, but that dimension of the world bothers me so deeply to my core, and I felt it so painfully for the first 18 years of my life until I went to college, which, by the way, I ended up going to Vanderbilt because the Common Application, you just add other schools, and then every school I added accepted me, and I had no idea that would happen. No one encouraged me at that time. It was a very difficult time, the first 18 years of my life. A bit all over the place, but the thing that always drove me is to make the world a place where a person who wants to be more and do more can. And I wanted to make a world where people stop asking why, and they start asking why not. I wanted a world where if someone really wanted to do something incredible, they will be able to talk to someone or have access to something that can enable them to be as incredible as they want to be, irregardless of how terrible their environment is. And I believe, to the core of my being, that AI is the most promising technology to achieve that. That same motivation and fire is what makes me make my music. And you'll notice that my music is very dark. It's not happy. And so anybody who wants to see, like, well, what does a CEO in the Bay Area from MIT make? Check out Born in Hell, Let's Go by Palm DP, the PhD rapper, and you will see a very dark sense of music. And that's driven by the pain that I experienced growing up.
I can relate to a lot that you've just brought up. My upbringing wasn't the easiest. My parents were very, very close. I lost to both of them. I lost my father when I was 8, and I just recently lost my mum. And I spent...
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, it still is. I mean, this is why I'm wearing black, and I don't know if I'm ever going to take off wearing black. I kind of spent my entire life since my dad passed just focusing on doing everything I can to be really close to my mom and looking after her, especially as she got older and she also got cancer. But the thing that occurred to me is after she passed, I thought it was over. I really did. I thought, this is it. All this hard work that I put in, everything that I did to elevate my career and build my, my future, I thought, that what's the point anymore? But it's like I found this new sense of purpose now. And like I said, I don't really talk about this. I haven't spoken. You kind of brought it out of me in a way. Not necessarily with AI, because I'm not deeply technically versed as you are, and the engineers that I place, although I surround my whole life around them. Try to create enough wealth where I could give everything back in terms of charity. Like that's my driving force now. Like everything that I can build to give it back in a way that could solve some major things that I care about. Some related to health, some related to poverty, some related to areas in the world that don't even have clean water. And it's interesting, like when you talk about the passion for music, the reason I like the music that I like is because very few memories of my father is listening to music. He would play certain music and I'd listen to it. And I started dancing to Michael Jackson and listened to Tupac and Biggie, and I got into hip hop and R&B, and that's why when I saw that in your background, I was quite intrigued, because there's certain passions that I have outside of what I do, but the industry I operate within doesn't necessarily talk about these things. It doesn't really come up, so it's quite intriguing for me. But why rapping for you?
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I feel for you. Why rapping? So I don't know. I was 10 years old. I heard Eminem. A lot of people heard Eminem at that time. He was just absolutely at the peak of his career. I still deeply respect Eminem. I think Eminem is one of the least understood people by the masses and very well understood by his fans. I think that's common with a lot of artists, but with him, I think that it's fairly extreme. I'm a very technical person. Eminem is the most technical rapper, I think, probably on planet Earth, probably of all time. If you look at some of these songs and you actually read the lyrics, like let's just do this real quick. I think it's worth actually taking a second. Here's a random song. I just typed in random Eminem song and I got Under the Influence. And this is how it starts. Just imagine putting words together this way. 2 pills I pop till my pupils swell up like 2 pennies. I'm Clint Eastwood in his mid-20s. A young-ass man with a trash can strapped to the back of his ass so the rats can't chew through his last pants. I'm like a mummy at night, fighting with bright lightning and frightened with 5 little white Vicodin pills biting him. I'm a wasp in the hospital lost, stinging the fuck out of everything I come across in the halls. I light a candle and place it up on the mantle, grab a knife at the blade and stab you with the handle. These, like,
That's
I think
unreal.
when you hear it,
It sounded like, honestly, the way you did that was pretty awesome.
that's Eminem, and it's not even my own stuff. I share that because first time I heard it, I heard, okay, this is crazy stuff. He's talking about stabbing things on the mantle, like he's using cuss words.
Yeah.
There's some misogyny here. Like there's some stuff that's not good for me. But then I listened again, and I was like, my God, that was technical. Like every single word. And then I tried to write my own stuff. I was like, can I do that? If he's just a rapper who's just saying nonsense, like let me try to do that. So I started writing my own lyrics, and I was like, wait, what he's doing is different. What he's doing is not like what other people do. What he's doing is putting words together in a way no human I know of on earth can do. And I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. I thought it was incredible. And I started listening to more of his music, and I realized something amazing that I think a lot of people get when they listen to music. I didn't feel alone anymore. And I didn't feel alone in all the crap I was going through. He was a nerd too. He also got bullied. And so his music started to make me feel like I wasn't alone, and it made me feel energy. And it was good energy. It was powerful energy. And I would take that energy to school, and I would get A's, and I would take that energy to college, and I would do research, and so I started making music because I found this source of energy. It was like unrelenting. And the first songs I made, I was like, oh shit, I'm good at this. I was so surprised. I was better at it than I realized. And so then I started playing some stuff for friends. And some of my friends shot me down. Oh, this is crap. Don't do this. Keep your day job. But some of my other friends were like, dude, this is actually really good. Like, really good. Like, people who don't give compliments were saying it was good. And I started to realize, like, 2 things. One, I was really good at it. And 2 is that when people who my whole life had told me, don't do this, you're crap at this, that music is just one of those things. It's like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. And there are certain musicians and artists where they're in the eye of the beholder for most of the masses, but even they have people who don't like their stuff. Everyone's got critics. And so I started to realize, like, ignore the critics, because there are enough people on this planet who think you're good. in terms of them enjoying it. And I realized I think I'm good too. I think I'm very good. I think I have a lot of improvement to make, but like, and that was just an incredible source of fuel. And the most incredible thing about it is like the company I'm building is taking, it's going to take like half a decade or more to like achieve this very difficult thing. But you can make like an incredible, incredible song that no one's ever heard and accomplish the whole thing in 2 to 3 days. And so that's a very fulfilling part of the work. I love that part.
You know, Curtis, it's interesting, right? Like, when I think about the work that we do, it's a lot of hard work. I mean, everything's work. I mean, this podcast is a conversation, but even there is work behind it, right? We have to get this mic. We have to be in the studio. We have to be in the lights. Whether I'm in SF or I'm doing it remotely, like there's a lot of work that goes in. Obviously, booking in the guest, everything is work. But I feel like there's a certain element of the one thing I believe in is trusting the process. Like in anything I do, just trust the process. Whether it's recruiting, whether it's the podcast, in what you're doing, building in CleanLab, trusting the work that you do. And I feel like the byproduct of that comes in time, even music. I will also say I believe that Eminem is probably one of the greatest rappers of all time. And I think it's sad, but I feel like in music, especially in the rap world, they don't truly get recognized. And I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on this. And by the way, this podcast is called Inside the Silicon Mine. We're so away from Silicon Valley now. We're talking about something completely different. But I feel like musicians, especially rappers, they become more respected when they pass. Like right now, this is going to be the most controversial comment I'm about to make, but who is greater? Is it Eminem or is it Tupac?
Yeah.
Is
After Eminem passes, we'll see.
We'll see, right?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying, right? Like right
Yeah.
now, it's very easy for people to say Tupac is the great, and I think Tupac is amazing. But I think it's only until Eminem passes would we really know what people think.
That's a very reasonable assertion.
Because I'd like to kind of go back to Silicon Valley, right, and CleanLab. This has been a really fun conversation. I really enjoyed it. I'd like to understand one thing that you talked about quite a lot is augmenting human learning in the face of noisy data. How does that work?
Yeah. So there's two things here. So one is there's AI and there's IA. So there's intelligence augmentation. So that's take a human's ability and make it go to here. And a best example of that is having access to the internet. If you compare a human who doesn't have access to the internet to the one who does, that's a totally different level of human. I can hear a bit of feedback, just a heads up. So I can kind of hear my voice. AI is the opposite, right? So AI is you have a technical thing that is very capable, and then it has nothing to do with humanity. And IA is you have a human who is enhanced by technology and they're made more capable. And so I think there's this really nice interaction that happens between AI and IA. And what AI can do is it can give IA, and then when a human is smarter, they can build better AI. And so you have this mutually beneficial loop that is created when the two work together. So the idea of intelligence augmentation with respect to noisy data was that I recognized one of the biggest inhibitors of human intelligence was that we're fed mistakes as we're trained. Just like AI is also deeply affected when you're fed mistakes during training. That's what my PhD is on. That's what confident learning is all about solving. And it can solve that problem pretty well, actually. So I thought about it for humans too. And I started thinking to myself, like maybe the best thing we can do to actually augment humanity and augment human beings' intelligence is to have filters that are preventing crap from going into our brains. Like maybe that is actually one of the best ways to make humans more intelligent and more effective, and also solve a lot of psychological problems too. Not just raw intelligence, but also like mental health and cognitive health. If you never, for example, saw that traumatic event that has caused you pain for the next 10 years, then you wouldn't have pain for the next 10 years. And so I thought a lot about how do we create filtering of the information fed to our brain. And the first step is to be able to detect it. So you have to be able to detect the information. So you have to be able to scan all text that's being fed into the mind, and you'd have to be able to classify basically for every input to your brain, whether it's a friend talking to you, or you're listening to the radio, or you're watching an ad, or you're seeing a picture on a bus that drives by, to be able to have a filter that does a classification task of this is accurate information that should go in my brain. This is not potentially uncertain, untrustworthy information that's going into my brain. And I have envisioned for a very long time a world that we are very far away from, where we could actually have glasses and we could have things over our ears that would filter all information. And on our phone, we would have a screen, and all of those things would be digital devices that would actually run a classifier in real time on all information, and it would prevent untrustworthy, inaccurate information from entering our minds in the first place. And that would solve most of the world's problems. And it would block out your parents lying to you or yelling at you. It would block out teachers who have big egos and they have to say the right thing to the fourth grader even though they don't know the answer. And so we would grow up as humans who had good information always given to our minds. And I think it would solve most of the world's problems if we built that technology.
So this is like going back to what you said when you said, why not? Right? Like creating a technology that allows, let's think about the kid in school. The environment around them stops them from being who they truly can be, right? But also I think about like there's something else that really bothers me personally, and it's media. Like I over the last few years I've become super really irritated with just news in itself because it's always depressing. Like there's nothing that's uplifting. And in our building, in our office building, the lift that we go in to go up to the top floor, it's got the screen and it has news in there every day. And every single morning I get in and it's always news that sucks out your soul. Like it's always depressing. It's not what I want to hear in the morning. You need that energy. I mean, when you walk into a room and your team's there, before you even say a word, you've already spoken based on that aura that you walk in with. So I feel like there's so much noise, and data's so important. It always has been, but now with AI, it's you can't have AI without data. So are you suggesting that there is a world where we can control what we want to let through?
The ideal world, can this be built? This world can absolutely be built. Will it be built? That's a very unpredictable question. But it's my own private thing. Like, you won't see this. There's no science fiction book about this as far as I know. There's no science fiction movie. The closest thing I've seen is a short story by Kurt Vonnegut called Harrison Bergeron. This is a terrible story, and this is the opposite of what I want to achieve. But it's a utopian story about a highly intelligent person who they've put earplugs on him so he can't hear properly, and then it bangs noises in his brain to try to get his intelligence down. They put weights on his body so he can't jump as high because he's so strong. They put goggles on him so he can't see because that keeps him stupider. And they just do all these things to basically like keep him controlled. And so it's not a utopia, it's a dystopia. It's a very dangerous future. And that's not at all what I have in mind. What I have in mind is that you have personal control over your ability to control the filters that go in, but there are some default settings which may be biased. It's difficult to get this right, but there are some default settings which are basically like all ads are now just turned off. Like if it's an ad, you just don't see it, you don't hear it. And if your friend starts marketing something to you, even your friend, then you hear just like a really nice, pleasant, your favorite song plays for a little bit. And the moment that they start communicating to you in a way where you need to hear them, or if they say help, like it's immediately turned off. And the reality is that future might sound far away, but it's not. Like I could train a classifier that can do that for almost every task. It's not going to be perfect is the problem. And I think there's a concern of like you might miss something that's good information. We're not that far away from being able to build that. Now, getting society to adopt that is another thing. But I do think it would be an incredible world if a child, for example, never had to hear like their parent abuse them. Or it's just a beautiful world. I'd love to create that world.
You have kids? Are you married?
I don't. I have a partner I care about very deeply, and would like to have children someday, but I have been very focused on trying to solve these AI problems, so I have put off a lot of things. Yeah, why do you ask?
The reason I ask is a lot of your inspiration, a lot of your ideas, it's all about building a better future. It's about building a future where, like if I think about your upbringing and, when you think about the house you grew up in and how things transformed for you as you grow older, the friend you met who's now your friend who also has his own startup, the environments that inspire you, the ones that bring you down, and especially this one we just spoke about now, is building a world where kids could grow up in a better environment. As far as, when it comes to parenthood, I feel like the way a kid turns up in the end, whether in their teens or before, is really dependent on how parents were towards each other, maybe not towards the kid, but towards each other. And if they see that, how that affects them in the future. That's the reason I ask, is because it's very inspirational to hear these things. I feel like you'd be a great father. And it's crazy, right? I heard this a long time ago from my brother, because I have 5 siblings who are older than me. They all have kids. So I don't have a kid, but I'm an uncle to 21 kids. The oldest is a year younger than me, and the youngest is 2 years old. And I feel like parents, they're not really parenting 100% of the time. They're probably parenting like 30% of the time. I mean, it's hard to put a number to it, but you've got social media, you've got the teachers, you've got their friends, you've got their environment, you've got their phones. How much time do parents really have as far as what they can teach their kids today?
Totally. There's a really good line, bringing it back, by Eminem, actually, that was totally overlooked and totally underappreciated. And it's such an incredible line. This is in 2000. He says, he's basically like, I've become nothing more than an animal caged who turned crazed. But how was I supposed to grow up when I wasn't raised?
Wow, that was in 2000.
Yeah, and this stuff is totally slept on, you know? It's like, how are you supposed to grow up if you're not raised? So I think the biggest problem, by the way, in the world, if we want to chat about big problems, you know, people talk about AI and all this stuff. The biggest problem has always been the same. The biggest problem on Earth has never been clean water or war or lack of peace. The biggest problem on Earth has been bad parenting, and it's always been bad parenting. And it's been bad parenting for millennia after millennia after millennia. Not all bad parenting, by the way, is the parent's fault. Sometimes the parent doesn't have the tools. Sometimes they're not ready. But the reality is that biologically, we are manufactured biologically to recreate. And when we do that, we become parents. And many of us aren't prepared for that. And when that happens, we make a lot of mistakes. And every parent makes mistakes. It's inevitable. The question is, like, how much can you mitigate the mistakes that you make? Like, you want to try to have as least negative impact on that child so they can become their own thing. And you don't want to be too controlling or too over. It's a very complicated problem. And so I personally don't feel well equipped to solve the world's parenting problem, so I don't. What I do feel equipped in is to use artificial intelligence to provide a really intelligent friend for every child who can support them, or to provide filtering of what goes into their minds so that they can have accurate information. And so these are some things that I feel like I do have some power and control in this world and in my time on this planet, which is very limited, and I don't intend to live forever, even though a lot of people in the Bay Area, if we want to talk about being inside the Silicon Mine, there's a lot of people here who think they're going to live forever. I don't prescribe to that ideology, and I think we have a limited time and we need to do our best with it.
I definitely agree on that point. A lot of things that you see in science fiction or these movies in Hollywood, billionaires have sold a few startups, made a lot of money. Now they're thinking about, how do I stay alive for as long as possible? Kind of freaks me out.
The real thing, yeah. So it is possible, by the way, we can upload our brains to a computer, but your consciousness won't be uploaded. And so what will ultimately happen is, like, some version of you will continue on, and the world will, like, love you and adore you, but it won't be you. Like, you will die, and that version of you will continue in the form of some digital form. And that's a very real thing. Like, that's already probably happening and going to happen for sure. But, like, this idea that you're going to feel it or experience that consciousness is, like, that's not going to happen. So, like, why do you want that? Like, why does the world need you so bad in the future? Like, that's a good question to ask yourself.
I feel like it's what you leave behind. You know, it's as you said, do good work because your time is limited. I'm experiencing that right now with losing my mom. She was 77. My dad was 55 when he passed. It's a crazy world that we live in where people feel like they could create something that can stay on forever. We've touched on only half the stuff I wanted to talk about. I would love to have you back on, maybe even do this in person to touch on the other stuff. The stuff related to Silicon Valley, you know, how to build a startup.
Do you want to rapid fire anything?
I would love that. I'll tell you what, I think the interesting thing for me is this particular episode today touched on the human behind the founder, right? And it's unique. It's really unique. Two more questions, right? The one I always ask, which is the one related to recommending a book. This is, you know, Inside Silicon Mind is all about learning and developing. So I always like to ask my guests at the end, you know, a book that you'd recommend. So I'll let you think on that for a moment. But the question before that I'd like to ask, it takes us back to the world of AI, starting companies. One that really gets me thinking now is, are we embarking on a world that we become so dependent on AI that it could potentially affect our cognitive ability? Because we're super dependent on this technology. We become even more dependent. I mean, I heard my niece the other day, she was doing her homework using ChatGPT. And it kind of freaked me out because how much of it was really her. And it's accepted by the school. So I'm just thinking, like, someone in your position who is building a startup in the space, who's a PhD, who truly understands this way better than I do. Is there a world where we are embarking on, we're super dependent on AI to the point that it affects our cognitive ability? Like it speeds up the possibility of cognitive decline.
Respectfully, it's not a question, it's a guarantee. The cognitive decline part is harder, but will it affect human cognition, it's a guarantee. It's a guarantee it will affect positively or negative. That's going to be difficult to say. That's going to be dependent on the person and how they use it. Society at large, the average, that's an unpredictable thing. I don't want to make a statement. I think most new technologies have led to increased comfort. Most increased comfort has led to a reduction in grit. Most reduction in grit has led to less capability. One might argue, based on first principles, that we've now added another level of technology that will further reduce our need to have grit, which will further increase that sort of WALL-E future where we're all floating around and our thing in the river. If you've ever seen the movie WALL-E, where basically everyone's like incapable, and like that is a possibility, but I won't guarantee that one. What I will guarantee is that humanity will certainly be effective cognitively, and increasingly so year over year. And it's very unpredictable how that will all play out, and I think it will be very different. What I will say that's very optimistic and should get people excited is that the world that I want is, and I'll be specific, and this is very personal to me, it's a world where someone who is very ambitious and very much wants to make the world a better place and wants to create a better future and wants to use this precious moment that they have on the planet. In the grand scheme, it's just a moment. To use that moment they have of what we consider life, and to use it maximally to the benefit of humanity. If you're that type of person, you will have more capacity with the future we are building to do that than ever before. And you absolutely can train yourself even better and faster and harder, and you can become smarter than ever before with these tools. But you have to be very self-aware, and you have to constantly check yourself and your reliance on the technology. Are you actually thinking? Like, are you deeply thinking about what you're doing, or are you sort of letting the AI think for you? And are you growing? Are you learning? You have to be very self-taught and self-intentional. And I think the main requirement for humans to do that well is actually an increased cognitive filtering capacity. They have to learn to because there's more AI-generated stuff every day, and more ability for humans, by the way, to do work even faster. That means that the world is creating more stuff to fly at your brain. Every year it's more than before, and you can measure this. There is more stuff being sent at your brain in this year than ever before in any previous year. And the world is continuing in that direction, which means that the most capable humans, the most successful humans, will be the ones who engage in their curiosity and creativity and self-discipline, but also have a tremendous ability for cognitive filtering, to only think about what they want to think about. It's a very disciplined thing that has to be learned. And given those characteristics, I think that the world is actually much better for people in terms of their cognitive capacity, but it's only the people who engage in that discipline.
That's a very interesting way to think about it. I guess what you're saying there is it's definitely going to affect, there's no doubt, but it's down to the individual in terms of how it affects them in a positive way or in a negative way.
Yep, and a little bit of parenting.
We may have, if it's okay with you, you're right, I'd love to just fire up some quick questions and very sort of keep them towards what a lot of guests like to hear, which is being a startup founder in Silicon Valley. I know I said I'd wrap it up, but within sort of a couple of minutes, it'd be good just to fire up some quick questions. So what is the biggest challenge that you're seeing today as a startup founder?
Biggest challenge. The workforce is becoming separated into two groups. One of those groups is typical engineer, and the other group is one who's like a 10x engineer. Who works extremely hard. The 10x engineers' salaries are like going through the roof, and it's impossible. And sometimes they make $10 million a year, and it's like a very real thing. And then the rest of the engineering, the average engineer who comes in is actually less capable than before, which is a surprise to us. It looks like so many more people have gotten computer science degrees in the last few years because someone told them it was a good job or whatever, and so it's just not the same quality. And so you've got like your bottom tail, which is very big, and the quality seems to be getting lower, and the expectations are so high, and like the team that we have is very, very intelligent, so the bar is very high. So hiring has become more difficult, and I'd say that's common for everyone. Maybe one more is, just because it's very interesting, is we're in AI infrastructure, and this market is changing faster every single day. Like literally daily. So like you'll be supporting a customer and then GPT-5 comes out, or you're supporting a customer and then MCP comes out. And even the way that we host models and the way that like enterprise AI actually works just changes at a daily. Like, are we doing RAG or are we doing large context windows? And I could just do this all day. Like the number of questions that our customers have in terms of the how, They all know what. They know the what. The what is, I want AI to automate this job. I want AI to make me better at this job. I want AI to increase my revenue. Like, they know the what. There's no question about the what. It's the how where they get hung up. How do we do it? Should we use RAG? Should we go on VPC? Should we do multi-tenant SaaS? Should we do single-tenant SaaS? This goes on all day. And the thing is that my customers are very intelligent people, but they're being overwhelmed with all the possibilities, and they keep changing. The possibilities in the market is changing so fast. So it's actually very difficult to build one product that works for every customer for the next 5 years. In fact, I'd say it's impossible. And so you have to create new models of business that didn't exist before, that combine a mixture of infrastructure, product, handheld, POCs. It's changing very quickly, and it's a very, very complex time to be a founder trying to do a very ambitious goal in the infrastructure side of things.
Second to that, as a founder in Silicon Valley, and with everything moving at such a fast rate, as you said, is daily, how do you keep your fingers on the pulse?
Oh yeah, it's a full-time job. Yeah, you basically have to be so addicted and so interested in AI and the future of AI that you are willing to do that. How do I do it? Extreme cognitive filtering, summarization. There's a thing created by the Small founder, which basically is Swix, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but it's basically a tweet summary that summarizes all the tweets and sends it to your inbox. A lot of people will have heard of this. It's pretty common. That's pretty helpful because I can't read all of Twitter, and that comes out daily. And then there's a whole bunch of people there's a lot of noise. There's a million newsletters you get as a founder. You just keep getting signed up. And so you have to have someone, and you have to have many tools that constantly unsubscribe. I unsubscribe, and this is not emails a day. I unsubscribe from hundreds of things a day. That's how noisy inboxes are. But I have to respond to customers in 24 hours, and the customers email me. So it's all the same inbox. And to the people who are generating all that noise, like I would deeply ask you to stop doing that. It's very bad for the world. It's not helping people who are working very hard to do good things. You're hurting the world by doing that. So please stop. But yeah, basically the amount of unsubscribes required is insane. So that's how you keep your pulse. You're ruthless about unsubscribing and blocking and marking as spam. And you have a few sources of information that have accuracy to the best of your ability. And then you also, and I highly recommend this, you follow a few people that no one's looking at who you deeply respect. And a good example of that is like there are the people who are super famous, who are really well known, and then there are like these incredible researchers that like don't have any podcast or like anything at all. And you just read their papers and some of their blogs, and you'll find that information is deeply pure and incredibly helpful in following the market, and you have to figure that out on your own.
Final question. What excites you or concerns you about the AI landscape over the next 5 years?
Oh, final question. That's the hardest question. Excites me or concerns me. It's naturally very concerning that AI is past the catalytic point where it will become smarter than humans at some point. It's basically a guarantee as long as humanity's around and we keep working on AI, which we will because we're incentivized commercially to do so. So that's a concerning thing because we won't be able to understand AI and we won't be able to fully comprehend why it does what it does because it will do things that are processing in ways that are beyond our own capacities. And I think that's just a very naturally concerning thing. Basically, think about the impact of TikTok on the world and on humanity and on children. And now ask yourself, like, how would we not expect AI to have similar impacts, but of a very different form that's surreptitious that we're not aware of? So that's concerning. What am I most excited about? I think the promise of AI has more potential and more reward for humanity than anything that we've ever done. The sci-fi fiction where you have like a robot that can like actually just like help you in the kitchen, or the sci-fi movie where like you basically can know everything by having the internet in your brain, but also a way to process the internet. Like we're not that far from that future, and it's incredible. Like if you actually just ignore all the fears for a little bit, which you shouldn't do all the time, but if you do take a moment and you just appreciate that we're going to have a world where you can talk to super intelligent computers and they'll talk back and assist you in all things, that's just by nature very exciting. Like if you like The Matrix or you like any sci-fi movie you've ever watched, then like that's the world that we are now starting to build. It's a very exciting time to be alive and a human and in AI.
Our job today looks very different to what it was 3 years ago. I mean, the amount that's been automated and what we've discovered is we're spending so much time doing all these different tasks, and now all of that is automated. And what we're left doing is actually the most important piece of why we do what we do. The value creation is creating that. What used to be 20% maybe or 30% of our work is now the majority of our work. Curtis, it really has been a pleasure having you on. Recommendation. Is there a book, one that you truly, truly would love to tell the world about?
I'll give two. The one that I want to tell everyone about is called Connect. But the problem with Connect is that reading it isn't sufficient. You have to practice it. And so it's a tough one for me to recommend because it's not actually that effective when you read it. But if you were able to get the message out of that, I think that could actually solve many of the world's problems. And the reason I recommend this book, Connect, is that it's about T groups. These T groups are training groups. And it's a way that you can learn to directly create connection with other human beings. And for someone who's like myself, I grew up in the country in isolation in many ways and very technical. It wasn't always easy for me to connect with other people. And that book is literally like an algorithm of how to make other people feel more connected to you. It's incredible. And I can even give you a sample. Instead of saying that's great or you're awesome, all of those things are labels. They make you think about yourself and be like, am I great? Am I awesome? That doesn't help you connect with me. But when I say, when you shared that with me, I felt incredibly inquisitive and insightful. Now you're starting to connect with me because I haven't said anything false and I haven't given you any labels to question. Instead, you're here and you're now and you're in the moment and you're starting to feel what I'm feeling. You're connecting with me. And the book teaches you exactly what behaviors to do to make other human beings directly feel connected to you. It's an incredible book. So that's something I'd recommend, but it's hard to learn it without practicing it. And then the last thing I recommend is a very, very quick one. If you ever read, there's this book by Ryan Holiday that is in a bunch of sales, and it's not very well read by the AI community, but it should be, which is about grit. And it's called The Obstacle is the Way. But he has another book that I think is actually better, and it's this 365 daily Stoics thing, and it basically gives you every single day. You can read a little quote by Marcus Aurelius or some other folks like Seneca that help you to basically take on really hard tasks and accomplish things. And it's just one snippet per day, and I read that every day with my partner. And we're not perfect. We miss weeks sometimes. We miss whole months sometimes, but we try to read it every day. And it's a really grounding book. It's a very giving book. It doesn't take anything away.
I have read that book and it is a great book. The first one, Connect, who is it by?
Okay, I've got you. Bradford, David Robin.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's David Bradford, PhD author, and then Carol Robin, 2 authors.
Curtis, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed this one. Different, insightful, exciting, at times emotional, but definitely loved it. Would love to do it again in person next time. Thank you so much, Curtis.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the time.
This podcast was brought to you by Serrana Labs and powered by Harrison Clark. At Harrison Clark, we're at the heart of Silicon Valley's evolution and at the intersection of search and venture, funding the companies shaping the future and connecting them to the most elite cloud, data, and AI talent. To learn more, visit harrisonclark.com. If today's episode challenged your thinking, then share it with someone who's driving innovation. For even more insights on achieving product market fit, subscribe to our newsletter, the PMF Playbook, where we break down the journey from zero to product market fit. Visit thepmfplaybook.com. For more episodes, follow us on social media or visit insidethesiliconmind.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay consistent, and stay inside the Silicon Mind. See you soon.